So welcome back to Refresh. My name's Michelle and I'm an IQA here at Busy Bees. So I have two of my colleagues here in front of me. So can you introduce yourselves and tell me a bit about yourself and the sector that you work under and what your role is here?
Yeah, my name's Jane McDonnell and I'm a development coach for the residential childcare team.
And can you give us a bit about your background?
My main background is early years,
Yeah.
but then I decided on progressing through to like teenagers and got a job with residential childcare, which I really enjoyed, and then developed my assessing and training and development to progress onto this development coach. I've only been with Busy Bees just over a month and really enjoying it.
Fantastic. And yourself, please?
I'm Caroline Farish. I'm also a development coach in the adult care sector. So obviously my background is working with the elderly with learning disabilities, dementia, etc. I've also been a qualified assessor for 18 years and also I've progressed myself throughout the years doing all the training to make sure that I have a good understanding of the requirements of the job.
Fantastic. So at times there's a bit of a crossover between the sectors, but we'll look a bit about that and a bit individually as well. So can you tell me a little bit about the apprenticeships and what they are and what's expected from a learner when they arrive here at Busy Bees and they say, right, I'm going to do an apprenticeship in residential childcare or I'm going to do an apprenticeship in adult care? So we can start with residential childcare first.
Yeah, there's two options. I can either do the level 3, which is the level 4 standard for children, young people and families standard.
Yeah.
And that's usually over 2 years. Once they've done that, they could then progress on to do their level 5, which is more of the management role, again 2 years. And that includes, once they've done the diploma side of the qualification, they would then go through the Endpoint Assessment.
Yeah.
So this is where they would be assessed. There'd be a competency interview with a professional discussion on the evidence in their portfolio.
Yeah.
And for level 5, they would also do a multiple choice exam, which would be based on scenarios.
And do you think people are aware of endpoint assessment and what's required of them on that day that they sign up on that qualification?
No, I don't think they are.
No?
No, but they'd be fully supported, and by the time it gets towards the end, hopefully all the skills, knowledge and behaviours that they've learnt on the programme, they'll be fully supported and fully ready to be able to go through that endpoint assessment, quite confidently, because they should know it all by then.
Fantastic.
Done it in their job for nearly the last 2 years, so they should be well experienced as well.
Brilliant. We'll pick up on endpoint assessment a bit further if we can shortly. So Caroline, tell us about when a learner jumps in and says, right, I'm ready, I'm going to do an adult care apprenticeship. What's their expectations and how do you support them and let them know what's there and what endpoint assessment is?
Okay, so there's a few different levels. You can obviously start off as an adult care worker, which is level 2, so that's predominantly for like your care and your support workers.
Yeah.
There's also your level 3, so they're more for people that are in a senior role, because obviously you need to demonstrate that you've got them leadership skills with that for that position. And then there's level 5, which is for the manager. The 2 and the 3 obviously consist of your functional skills as well, and also the use care certificate in there. But again, obviously all the 3 levels do have the endpoint assessment. Obviously the level 5 is different to the 2 and the 3, but the 2 and the 3 obviously look at your professional discussion, which would last 45 minutes, so they can get graded as a pass, a merit, a distinction.
Yeah.
And again, that's where they demonstrate their competencies to be able to get that. So like the diploma, they'd come out at a 2 or a 3. The actual endpoint assessment would then grade them as a pass, merit or a distinction to show the depth of the awareness that they've got within the skills.
Fabulous. So do you think that joining Busy Bees, undertaking an apprenticeship is giving your learners a valuable qualification? Would you say they're valuable and they fit what they need to do to be able to complete their job roles?
I do. I think that you learn a lot from an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps you progress up the ladder, doesn't it? Especially if you want to go down like
it's all hands-on, isn't it? They're learning while they're working, so it's something that they're doing every day, and then like you say, they become more competent the more often they do it.
Fantastic. So if I enrolled in a qualification today, tell me about a bit what my first session would be like with you guys. So what am I expected to do? What's expected of me? And how will I then know what the qualification is? And
So like on your induction day, I'd book in, like, we'd plan for you to do an initial assessment for your maths and your English. We also have an assessment that's like Cognisist that also supports us to identify if you've got any other additional areas of need for us to support you through that as well, to prepare you for your exams.
Yeah.
On the induction, the need to do your initial assessments for your induction, but on the induction I would go through in detail what the qualification entails. So I'd break down the maths part of it into your calculator and your non-calculator base, your English into your speaking and listening, your reading, your writing, etc. I go into detail on the endpoint assessment, how long it lasts, your multiple choice exam, and obviously like the grading systems. And I confirm that they're fully happy to sign off before I sign up the agreement with them. And then we'd go through like the first teaching all the units, planning it, and looking at what support they need. And if they identify that you need a support plan in place, we'd look at how often they want the visits in regard to the background in the job, because I have had some learners that have just purely come into care and they've not got any experience to reflect back onto.
Which could be a little bit overwhelming, couldn't it? And there are a lot of components that make up an apprenticeship. So what about that pastoral support that you give to your learners? Do you think a lot of it is just sitting and explaining what's required and how they're going to meet the standards that they're undertaking?
I think, as you first, when you introduce yourself to your learners and then you get to know them, you can see what support that they need, and it might be that you have regular, phone calls, texts, emails, actual team sessions to go through the work, and it's just what's individual for them, what their individual needs are, how much support they need, but you fully support them all the way through, and explaining how the work that they're doing, the knowledge base, how that they're implementing that into the workplace. So there's quite a lot of reflection as well.
Yeah.
Sort of what did they do? How did they implement that? What impact did it have? On their role? How are they developing and progressing themselves within that job role?
Yeah, and some individuals might need teaching in certain areas compared to others, because it depends again on like the background, how long they've worked into care, as to what support they need in that qualification.
So is there anyone in the wider team that Busy Bees offers that they can have support with other than the apprenticeship? So you talked about different components. Is there anyone that you can work with that they can get that additional support from?
For the functional skills, we obviously have a functional skills teams. They do online training sessions at the moment because obviously the COVID restrictions.
Yeah.
So I've obviously attended some of them myself just to see what they're like as well, so I know how to prepare what they are.
Lots of resources as well to practice on. Yeah.
We've also got a CPD team as well that teach them like safeguarding, first aid, and they can also do like the care certificate knowledge side of it via us as well.
Brilliant. And if they needed anything that was outside of Busy Bees, do you think that we're, offer that additional support if they need signposted anywhere else? So if we couldn't fulfil a need for them on the apprenticeship, do you think we're strong and we can develop that and offer those resources and signposting?
So, yeah.
It's part of our role, isn't it, to give information, advice and guidance of where to point them at certain areas.
Definitely. So thinking about the apprenticeship, and we'll go into EPA in a bit more detail in a minute, what can they gain? What's the point? What do they get at the end of it? Can they progress their careers? Is there value to doing the qualification to move them somewhere else, or for them to continue in their roles? Yeah,
there's a lot of value in it. Obviously, they're bettering themselves in understanding the qualification in more detail. There is opportunities for them to progress up the ladder, move on to other sectors, like I said earlier about moving on to hospitals if they want to be like a midwife or a nurse, because that helps them with the point system to be able to get into that.
Brilliant.
That's it. And with residential, they can move on to either become a manager themselves, or they might even want to go to do social work.
Yeah.
Or work with the youth offending team.
Yeah.
Youth worker. There's lots of opportunities.
Could even go around assessing route like us.
Yeah, they could definitely. So they could go in. So there's lots and lots of pathways for them to have. So it does hold that that it is valuable for them to take it.
And I think it's quite rewarding as well in residential care, because they're embedding the quality standards, but they're also promoting positive outcomes for the young people.
Definitely, and that they're making sure that their voice is heard and their thoughts and their wishes and their feelings are all captured. And in adult care, it's moving people forward and making and putting a value on the quality care that they give. And then they get a qualification to show that. So looking at endpoint assessment. So we talked a little bit about that. Can you tell me a bit about the qualification and, because they do still get qualified. So can you tell me a bit about the qualification and why endpoint assessment is valuable and what they could get out of that endpoint assessment?
The qualification would be the level 3 diploma if they're on level 3, but the actual standard is the level 4 standard. And I think it just shows that how well competent they are in that role, and also gives them that edge. It's more than just the level 3 diploma. Where employers are looking for somebody that's got something could be extra special, that they can bring to the company, and it just gives them more of an advantage. And again, it highlights, if they want to progress, they've already got this level 4 standard, which would, go forward for progressing on to further education.
It does, and there's a grading system involved as well. So do you want to talk me through a bit about the grading
I'm
systems?
just going to start, like say, within like your level 2s and 3s of your diploma, you just come out as level 2 or a level 3, so it does matter the depth that you put in it, but it doesn't show in your grade because you come out as your 2 or your 3, whereas when you go to your endpoint assessment, obviously the depth of your knowledge is shown through your grade, because you can get obviously fail, and then obviously you've got your pass, your merit or your distinction. So at least then employers, when they're looking at certification, they can look and just say, oh, they've just got a level 2, or this one's got a distinction, this one's got a merit, and it shows the depth of the standard that individual's got.
And that adds some value, doesn't it, and some quality, because there's another judgment coming from the awarding body, so it's not just a qualification, you're actually being deemed
quality
competent.
workforce, you want that quality workforce.
And we know workforce planning, it's something that's going to be always ongoing, but if you can see that distinction, and it's not to say that any other qualifications that have previously happened have any lesser value, but you're now being deemed, and there's that extra bit of support, isn't there, and you can get that pass, merit or distinction and show what you've learned. And
I think it's good for the learner as well, because like you say, it could just be level 2 or level 3, but with the grading, it values that the hard work that they've put into it as well. It's not just a certificate, it's actually showing what they have learned, how competent they are.
Yeah, definitely. It's that extra recognition, isn't there, for what they've done. So, off the job, bit of a taboo topic for people. People always think, oh, how am I going to do this? So tell me a bit about off the job and why that's important to an apprenticeship, and how you encourage your learners and some of the things that you could encourage them to use as off the job hours.
So your off your job is all about like the learning that you've gained through the qualification to develop yourself. There's a lot of different activities that you can use for your off your job. It can be looking at like your policies and procedures and how you've developed through them. It can be looking at like your online training, how you've gained some kind of development through that. The actual qualification that you do with us, again, you're gaining that depth of knowledge to be able to expand on your own practices.
Yeah. You think of any scenarios that you could use or you have used with your learners to encourage them for new learning that's logged?
I've had a learner that was in charge of a shift, and the fire alarm went off, and obviously they were the only one that were on it, and it wouldn't reset. It were obviously like a false alarm, and they didn't know how to reset it. So obviously they learned how to do that through having to deal with the situation. So once it obviously happens again, they now know what action to take. So they felt that was beneficial.
Yeah, and off the job it's quite daunting for some people because the amount of hours that they've got to log. But when they understand and when people are aware of what they can capture as off the job, because something is new, isn't it? Something's new learning.
Yeah, anything that's developing their skills and knowledge.
Yeah.
And the requirement's 20% of the job hours that they need to achieve.
Even when we give them the feedback as well on how they've done in observations and stuff, they can learn from that, because obviously they've been shown by a certain colleague, but who said that colleague were doing things officially right, if you know what I mean, sort of thing, until they've got that. Yeah. Obviously they're doing it how they were shown, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was the correct way.
Yeah, and that reflection also reflects new learning, doesn't it, and how you can capture, and that adds value.
And research, the things that they research as well.
Brilliant. So, thinking about your learners, and so we can give information, advice and guidance. We give career advice, information and guidance for our learners. Where else could the learners themselves access information regarding the apprenticeships that we offer?
They can go on the website. We have Visby's website.
Yep. Anyone else?
They can speak to their own company, because obviously we're part of that. We deliver it, so they can talk to their own managers in regard to the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Yeah. See what's on offer.
Yeah, fabulous. Is there anything else you want to tell us about your sectors or specific to your qualifications that you deliver? Do you think we've met everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think this past year has been quite challenging.
I
for
agree.
The care sector. So it'd be interesting to see, how that's going. What kind of impact that's had long term as well on staff.
Yeah, definitely. And, people still need qualifications to complete their job roles, and it's about adapting our approach. And, people have had to adapt in society, haven't they? And we've had to adapt our ways. But, we're still going to make sure that people are competent and they complete and meet the standards that are required. So,
but checking their mental health as well, because obviously they're going through the pandemic as well. It's a stressful situation for everybody.
It is, and that's I think that's one of the strengths that Busy Bees does have, is that we do look at our learners' well-being, and sometimes the course can be overwhelming, like we said at times, but we've got those mechanisms to put in place
quite
to support the
challenging.
learners. Yeah.
Yeah, the first visit on your induction can be overwhelming because it's a lot of information to take in.
Yeah,
It is. So it's just a matter of recapping as well on your next session and check that they still understand what's involved. And
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we've got one question from social media,
Yeah.
and it's, what is the employer's responsibility in regards to the endpoint assessment? What do employers need to know?
For which qualification?
For both, so we'll go for both.
Okay, so do you guys want to jump in?
that's right.
Okay, so I'll do the children and young people's families practitioner and manager. There is a lot of ownership on the employers now for endpoint assessment. So the employers have to provide 3 to 5 observations on the portfolio where they have to deem that their staff member is competent within their job role. That is quite scripted by the awarding body, and it's all been set out for them. It is quite templated and scripted as to what needs to be captured, but the depth of the knowledge that they capture, they do have to sign and say that their staff member is competent. That is separate but can be joined into the diploma, so they do have that overall responsibility. On the level 5 as well, they do have to declare the evidence that the learner has submitted is valid for them to go for their endpoint assessment. So they do have to sign a declaration to say that they agree that the evidence is their staff members and that they're competent to go to endpoint assessment.
And what about adult care?
So in regards to adult care, in regards to their competency, one of the witnesses needs to be specifically detailed to like the area that they're in, so whether the dementia, learning disability, so when they go to their endpoint assessment, the learner's not going to be disadvantaged by being asked about learning disabilities if they're dementia and it being marked against them. When it comes to their endpoint assessment, they need to obviously work with the individual to allow them that time to be able to sit the professional discussion as well as the multiple choice exams, because sometimes we might have to work to the awarding body as the dates that they've got available, and obviously it might tie into a day when a learner is on shift, so it's making sure that they work together to make sure, because if they don't attend it can go against them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. How was that?
Brilliant. Great.
All right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did we